All right. Well, we're getting started. I know people are kind of dribbling in here, and this is a cool call because I think this one is the one that has become very popular. Only because I see in our community, including me, because this understanding or paradigm is getting, at least in our community, fairly popular. A lot of people are writing books and they're on webinars now and podcasts. And it was just a matter of time before we started to get different ideas or different viewpoints on principles. And let me go to speaker view. There we go. And what the principles are and what it means, how to teach it, what to share, what to look for, and all that stuff. And I love that that's happening. And I think there's a question that somebody asked, and I want to first of all answer that question, which I think is a really cool one. Is why hasn't it not gone to the mainstream? Right. That was one of the questions I asked people if they have a question, and I thought that was a really cool question. Is why isn't this in schools? Why is this being taught as a curriculum? And all that, And I'll be quite honest. I kind of like the direction it's going, the way that it's kind of subtle. Because when I go to my recovery center, I'm not going in there and saying, it's the principles, right? They hear something, and they get an insight. Yeah, and it has been taught. Yeah, and I'll mention that. It's being taught in schools. But I'm talking about where people are thinking, now this needs to, as a paradigm, be thrown in and make sure everybody gets it, right? And my point of view from what I'm seeing is that it's going to happen. I think that schools are going to start getting hip to it. It's already happening in jails. I teach it at my recovery centers. But what I think the most important part isn't the idea that it needs to be taught. What's important to me is the sentiment of the principles is being shared every single day. Us being on this call and then going back into the world, whether we call it the principles or not, people will say, whatever he or she is having, I want some of that. And I think that's going to have the bigger impact, because what's going to eventually happen is this is going to be just another, if all we're focusing on is getting the principles out or somewhere, then it just becomes another thing that's going to be out there instead of the sentiment behind it, the feeling behind it. And that's something that we have available to us at any moment, which means if we go to Starbucks and someone's having a bad day, we don't have to go and say to them, well, how can I bring principles to Starbucks, right? And how can I bring the principles to the locker room? Which would be very weird if you did that, but you guys get what I mean. So now it's not about how to get it out there. It's already out there, because each and every one of you guys on this call is sharing it. Each and every one of you guys speak to your kids, speak to peers, go to your work, and the way that you're showing up, it's already seeping out to every single place that you can possibly be. So I actually like that kind of natural way that is being shared. And I don't have a problem that it's not going and happening fast enough, or the way, the way that it's just happening organically. It's just happening beautifully. And I'm getting to see it firsthand in the recovery center. People come back and say, look, I helped a friend. I just sat with them and I shared about our experiences, and I gave my friend a hug, and they didn't do drugs that day. That is sharing the principles. That is it. Like, it doesn't have to be, well, I told them to come tomorrow on Tuesday to my meetup group that called, the 3 principles of mind consciousness. No, he didn't do that. And so don't ever lose sight of that. I think it's very important to know that we are already sharing it. It already has a huge ripple effect in our lives. So for that person that had that question, I hope that was my answer. But I do want to share a video. I just found out a way that I can share a video, and I want to start the Zoom call on this. And this is, for those that don't know, I'm sure everyone here knows, but this is John F. Kennedy, and he did a speech about getting a man on the moon. And this was in 1962, September 12th of 1962. And I just wanted to share a 2-minute clip, and then I'll tell you why I shared it.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too. We shall send to the moon 240,000 miles away from the control station in Houston, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall, the length of this football field, made of new metal alloys, some of which have not yet been invented, capable of standing heat and stresses several times more than have ever been experienced, fitted together with a precision better than the finest watch, carrying all the equipment needed for propulsion, guidance, control, communications, food, and survival on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth, re-entering the atmosphere at speeds of over 25,000 miles per hour, causing heat about half that on the temperature of the sun, almost as hot as it is here today, and do all this, and do all this, and do it right, and do it first before this decade is out, then we must be bold.
All right, were you guys able to see that video? Yeah, cool. So that was John F. Kennedy in 1962 doing his Man on the Moon speech. And he said, we'll give it about a decade before someone lands on the moon. It ended up happening about 7 years later. It was in 1969, July 20th, 1969, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. Now, you know, I saw that. I don't know why I pulled up that clip. This just a couple days ago, I was just looking at speeches and I saw that speech. I wasn't even looking for anything, but just like people that just do really good speeches. And I went and had an insight. It's interesting because I went, you know, that's so neat. We got a couple humans, couple men on the moon. That's incredible. But then I reflected on it and I looked back and I said, you know what's even more incredible? That each engineer that worked on getting them on the moon, each scientist, each mathematician, each person, man and woman, that was in cubicles and offices all around the world, wherever they were at, they already knew how to get there. It was already inside of them to get to the moon. And that's what was like brilliant with what I saw. Is granted it took, you know, 9 years, but that's just because they had to get the workings out. But the answers were already inside of them. That creative potential to create something out of nothing that we always talk about was inside to get somebody on the moon. Now, John F. Kennedy was talking about, we're going to create alloys that haven't been created. Well, they were already created. They were inside. It's just a matter of getting them out into the world. Now, here's where I think that the most important part that I see, that I share with my community when I'm at the recovery center. They're all sober already. They're all perfectly whole already. It's just that they haven't seen it. And that's a different conversation when we're working with people and when we're having conversations. Because the first thing I do when I come into a community, or when I speak to even all of us here, or when I'm at my recovery center, isn't how do I bring the 3 principles into the recovery center or into my business. I look at each and every one of them and I say, they already have a perfectly healthy relationship. They just don't see it. They're already the best mother and father they can be. They just haven't seen it. They don't ever have to take a substance again. They just haven't seen it. My child, She's going to be 3 years old in February. She came out, and it was like months after she came out, I don't know how many months it was, she heard music and she started dancing. The dance was already inside of her. She was built into dance. She hears a beat and she starts moving her hands. She had no choice, right? But I'm starting to see at the age of 3 years old, she reconsiders dancing. She looks around to see if anyone's watching. She starts to get very uncomfortable with her dance moves now because maybe I'm not doing it right. And she starts to believe that kind of thought. And she goes into that route of seeing the world. But one thing that I will always remind her, the dance is still inside of her. It doesn't go away. She can be 40 years old, 20 years old, 80 years old. The only thing that will maybe get in the way is that she doesn't think that it's inside of her. That my recovery group doesn't think that they have what it takes to get back into their essence again. And so in that respect, sharing the principles is a lot easier than we think. It's a lot less harder than we make it. And we get bogged down, and this is what I'm seeing is like, that is the essence of it. It's very simple, that's it, right? And all the extra things, whether that's talking about the ego and separateness and oneness and the principles and mind consciousness and not, that's just dressing, right? That's just dressing. But if we can fundamentally see the truth of that for people, whatever comes out the way it does is going to come out the way it does, right? But I've seen it enough times to see that that's true. I've seen my employees at my restaurant come into my restaurant, and we talk about what we just talked about, just this very simple idea about what's already inside of us. And they come back to work and say, I really liked what you said, but I don't know what's going on. I mean, work is still the same, but my family life changed, right? Yeah, I'm enjoying going to work now, but my kid, I have this love for them I didn't know I had before. I didn't really talk about that with us in this group, because what people start to see is the truth of that in all aspects of their life, right? I'm kind of pretending I'm going to a recovery center, but I'm not. I'm not going to a recovery center. I guess recovery is a good name for it because they're just recovering who they are, right? Discovering, uncovering. Should be an uncovering center or a discovering center. They should actually call it all that. So that's the first thing I wanted to say, all right? That whenever we start a conversation, get it out of our heads. How do I bring this into the conversation? Because the same applies to us. We already know what we need to say. See, we're trying to have them see what they're missing, but we're afraid that we think we don't have it either. So how do we start a conversation like that? It becomes a little difficult, but it's okay. We find our way. But the one thing that I will tell you is if you are lost, and if you are stuck with not knowing what to say, great. You have one asset that we all have, which is telling the truth. Telling the truth is the biggest ally to getting this word out because it's truthful. And I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I went to my recovery center, and I didn't sleep till 3:30 in the morning the night before. I was exhausted. I was on a customer service call because my point of sale system broke for 2.5 hours, and then literally I had 8 minutes to get to my recovery center. And one of the clients in my recovery center raised their hand and they said, "We can tell how much sleep you had by what your hair looks like," because my hair was like a mess. And it was kind of funny. I'm like, yeah, that's a good indicator of how much sleep I had. But I went on for the next 20 minutes explaining I'm exhausted. I might have nothing to share today. And what I'm going to say may come out as shit. And I apologized. And I said, but I'm going to do the best I can. And someone raised their hand and said, "Thank God you said that. I needed to hear that." And I went, "What? I didn't say anything." But again, we don't know what people need to hear. And so when we replace our truthfulness for the principles, it doesn't come out right. When we try to replace where we're at in this moment, in this experience, whatever that is, it feels off for people. If we try to replace it with a cool metaphor or whatever because we think we don't know what to say next, people will feel it. So what you have is what you give, because that's the essence of it. And it turns out me not knowing what to say, not feeling right, was exactly what I needed to say and exactly how I needed to feel. Go figure. Right? So rule number one is, what do you say when you don't know what to say? Exactly what you just told me. I don't know what to say right now. And that's how it begins. I'm just reading some of the chats. Is there anything that anyone wants to share or anything say so far about what we've discussed? Because I have a couple more directions I wanna take it. But Dominic.
Yeah, I really like what you said about, well, because when you asked the question about why isn't this out there more, it's funny because that's like saying, why isn't gravity out there more? Like, how come more people aren't talking about it? Why, because I mean, the three principles describes how things work. And to ask why isn't it out there more, it already is, because that's how things work. Things work from the inside out. Now, people are figuring that out all the time, but not all of them are going to classes, or not all of them are going to, not everyone is taking classes on gravity. Some people just kind of figure it out just by living their life. And that's kind of what's cool, is that you will figure it out just by living your life. You don't actually need a three principles teacher or a three principles coach. You have your own connection to wisdom, and it'll get figured out. So all those students in schools, like, they'll figure this out too. And so I think that when we look at it, like, that's what we have going for us. Those in the three principles, what we have going for us is that what we're talking about is true, and it does work that way. And so whether we explain it to anybody or not, that is the way it works. And then if we find that it can be helpful, or we can find the words sometimes to explain something, well, that's cool too. But the world isn't out there waiting for us. I just wanted to say that.
Dominic, that was beautiful, man. And while you were talking, it just reminded me, a couple of days ago, I had a client at the recovery center who never really talked in my recovery at the center, like in my groups, just stayed quiet, but I could see something has shifted, but I didn't quite know. And they just listened every time they came to my group. And I finally took him to the side and I said, "Are you getting what I'm saying? Is this making sense? And do you like this conversation?" And he said to me, "I don't say much in this group, but I'm glowing and people are seeing that." Like, he's sharing the principles and he hasn't said a word. His family can see it. His friends have seen it, and he just happens to be a very quiet person, but his light is screaming pure love, pure potential, pure honesty that he wasn't able to see before. And so, and exactly how you said, it's like gravity. It's when people get in touch with that, that is what makes the change. That is what makes the world look a little bit different, a world look anew, right? And so for all of us here, and again, this is why I wanted to do this, is stop getting our ducks in order. Stop trying to figure out what it's supposed to look like, how we're supposed to share this, why someone else is doing it right, why they're doing it wrong, why it shouldn't. And I'm getting suckered into it too. I'm seeing all these posts, and I go, they're doing it wrong, or why are they talking about this? And I'm going, what am I doing? What is this? Why don't I just keep glowing? What do I care what other people are doing? My glow is what will make the difference. Me being with someone and sitting. Because what ends up happening is that instead of looking, it's like the firefly looking for the light until someone says, just look behind you, right? It's kind of that. And the gentleman that was in my group, it was like such a huge insight for me that he just didn't see that he was glowing. He was glowing the whole time. And when you're glowing, it stops making sense to use. And when you're glowing, it stops making sense to be hurtful at yourself and others. It just stops making sense. And when you're glowing, you want others to shine with you. You want others to see. I mean, it's funny how many times it's so cliche, right? To see the light in a way. It's like all these terminologies that were so cliche make so much sense to me now. Like they have deeper meaning to me now. So for those that are here that are new as practitioners, new in the principles, new to the paradigm, you're not new. You have the same capacity to get a man or a woman on the moon. You have the same capacity to one day wake up to see, man, I've been glowing this whole time. You have the same energy to see that you're not broken. And when you think you're not, when you think you are broken, the energy is still working because it's still creating. When you think you're not doing it right, well, it's still going. It's like if you're on a boat and you're going in the wrong direction, the boat's still working. Granted, you go in the wrong direction. What's good is like that boat has an infinite amount of gas. It can just turn around. So it's not you go, oh man, I'm going in the wrong direction. Instead of seeing that, well, that's okay. You should be grateful. It's going somewhere. That's good. The machine is working. And even if it spits out things that don't look right, it's still spitting something out. This is great news, right? So don't worry about the direction per se. Know that you have it in you to take you to a direction at any time. Because the good news is if you have enough gas to go the wrong direction and you have an infinite amount of gas, be blessed you can turn around. And that to me is what the magic is. And I explained this to my group. I said, we're so busy trying to figure out what to put in our cups. How many of you guys have heard is the cup half full, half empty thing? You know what I'm talking about? And we're all trying to figure out how to fill up people's cup or make it empty or change it from orange juice to apple juice because apple juice gives you a deeper feeling or whatever it is, right? Like making the cup, the inside of the cup, worthwhile or better or change it or different. But what I started to realize is not what's in the cup, it's that we all have a cup. That's who we are. We are the cup, not what we fill it in with. And so when we see that, people come into my recovery center and say their cup is half full. I say, cool. Someone says my cup is half empty. My cup is dribbling over. And I go, great. But do you guys notice the one constant? It's not what's in your cup, is it? It's that we all have the cup. We all have this energy. We all have this capacity. And in that capacity, we can fill it with thoughts that scare us. And in that capacity, we can have thoughts that don't look right. And in that capacity, we can do any infinite amount of things and start fresh again. And start fresh again and have that cup be filled again. And you can even spill your cup. Cup's still there. And so when we go out and share this stuff, mess up. Do it the wrong way. Make a mistake. And let others know that you're going to have something new in your cup in a minute anyway. And when they see that sentiment in us as practitioners, as parents, as teachers, as just humans, they're not going to be concerned what's in their cup because they see we're not either. And that's what we can offer. That's what's up for grabs. It's not what we know in the principles. It's how we, in spite of our fears, in spite of the thinking, we still can show up at a recovery center. We can still show up at our work. We can still show up and make dinner for our family. In spite of all that. And then people will start getting hip to that. And if they get a glimpse of, Amir didn't sleep till 3:30 in the morning. He had a 2.5-hour call with trying to get his point of sale fixed, but he still showed up here and spoke to us. And he still showed up and spoke to us in his most exhausted state of mind. And he still showed up and told us the truth that he's in a bad mood and things might not come out right, but he still showed up. Then maybe I can just show up too. And what's interesting about yesterday is a couple of the people in the group said, no one ever told me that I can show up whichever way, and that's okay. Because I was told, because I showed up like this, I'm a bad father. Because I showed up like this, I'm a bad employee. Because I have these thoughts, I'm messed up. Because I have X, Y, and Z, I need to do this. And I don't have to have the because anymore. I can say, I'm in this experience. Period. And then I'll meet you at the next experience. Period. And then I'll join you in another experience. And do that over and over and over again. And in that experience, there's this nourishment. Because what I think is happening not in our community, in the self-help world, they're looking for happiness. And the problem with happiness, you guys know it's fleeting. So, we've got something right in our community, in the Three Principles community. We're not looking for happiness. Because happiness is a very fleeting thing. And we're not, it's like someone saying, well, I'm looking for sadness. Well, what are you looking for? It's going to go up and down and around and change. But what I see as we look deeper into this and seeing its direct experience of life, there is a nourishment. It's nourishing. And nourishment is beyond sadness and happiness and every state that we will see. It's that glimpse that when we hear people say, I was okay in the turmoil, that okay is nourishment of that experience. It's kind of funny. We have half an hour. I want to give the last half an hour to all you guys, but a quick story. Some of you guys may know, you guys know what intermittent fasting is, right? So I've varied my timing of when I eat. My first meal is at 12 o'clock. My last meal is at 6. I eat about the same amount of calories. But they found out now, there's a guy, Dr. Fung, I highly recommend you guys watch his YouTube videos on YouTube, Dr. Fung. And they're starting to find out that when you shorten your time with intermittent fasting, your body has enough time to replenish itself and die and eat off old cells. It's called autophagy, right? Your body actually has enough time because it's not processing food to take care of other parts of the body. And so people think, well, that's a diet. And it's actually the opposite of a diet. It's nothing at all. You're not doing anything. You're not eating. So it's not a diet. It's taking a break from eating so your body can heal itself, right? And the principles, when people think this is another coaching technique or strategy, it's the opposite of. Because when we're not spending a lot of time in our thoughts, we get a mental autophagy. We start clearing up our spiritual self. We give ourselves time in this experience to feel connected again, to clean up the mental space, to feel alive again. It's the opposite of everything that we think it is. It is not a way to do life. It is life. It is not a way to do a diet. It's the absence of a diet. And then, of course, it makes sense in our body if we stop eating and give our bodies a break, that it will find ways to fix itself, both with hormones and all the endocrine system starts to get fixed. It's fascinating, the research behind it. But I went, well, that makes sense. If it happens in the body, why wouldn't it happen in our psychology? You take away all the things that we believe we are, we need to do, we need to share, and what's left is this room, us seeing eye to eye, heart to heart in this experience. And the good news is we don't know what that spirit is fixing. We don't know what it's going to change for us. We don't know what we're going to see from this cleaning up, from this autophagy of the soul. And that to me is miraculous. That to me is where we don't have to, like what's neat about intermittent fasting is, I mean, you have to eat healthy, but you don't have to count. They're starting to find out, even with intermittent fasting, that the calorie in, calorie out was a myth, because what people didn't take into account is our hormones. If our I'm sure Michael can explain a lot of this a lot better than me, but if your hormones are off, you can gain weight, you can lose weight, you can have your body needs to have some sort of equilibrium. And it turns out when your body is in intermittent fasting, it will know what to do with the excess food. It knows if you've eaten too little to slow down the metabolism just enough for you to be back to equilibrium. That's what they're starting to find out, because that's how our bodies were designed to eat, right? And in the same respect, you don't need to know what to say next. You don't need to know how to share the principles, because when you're in this experience, it will get you back into that equilibrium. It'll get you back connected to the others for them to hear what they need to hear. Their spiritual hormone levels will adjust to be with you in that experience, so to speak. I don't know how far I can take this metaphor, but so we go out and live. And in that living, the sharing shows up, not the other way around. How do I share this to have a deeper living? It's living this brings out a deeper sharing. Living this experience brings out a deeper sharing, right? And I just saw this morning, and I'll leave it with this, and then I'd love to hear you guys' insights. Real poetry is to lead a beautiful life. To live poetry is better than to write it, right? Like, that is our poetry, our life. This is it. This is the song. This is the dance. This is the music right here. This is it. I had no idea if I'm going to share anything today. I have no idea what I was going to talk about. I just came on in here with a group of people, knowing that each and every one of us has everything already equipped to do whatever they need to do next. 100% believe that. And the good news is, after this, the rest is up to us. The rest is up to us how we want to do this experience, do this creative capacity, do this gift that we've been given as soon as we were born. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me 37 minutes of your time. I'd love to hear your questions, your answers, and I hope this was somewhat useful.
Hi.
Hi, Sharon.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful and very timely for me. It's been, I've been in a period of just knowing that my sharing is shifting. I mean, it's always different, but right now, especially, front and center is the need, or the knowing of being like purely authentic. I mean, that's always been a thing, but now it's like, well, it's a little scarier, because right now I don't look the part in my sharing that I used to look. Like, I've got a lot going on, and so, I will share, like, this is a really tough time, and when I'm down, and all of that. but it feels super important to me because it's inaccessible to others. This is how I feel. Like when I hear teachers that are always like, even the thing about being okay when you're down, like when I'm down and I'm really in the down, I cannot say that I'm always okay with that. You know, it's afterwards when I look back on it and I'm in a different space and I have greater perspective and it looks like a beautiful part of human nature. But in the moment, no, not necessarily. So everything that I'm saying that I used to say, I'm pausing. I just did this with a client like an hour ago and said, wait, I have to make sure I'm telling the truth here. And I think that that's so helpful. But also it's the only way that I can really love what I'm doing. It's the only way that I can feel in alignment, is to be honest that way. And I just wanted to share a quick story, which is that sort of referencing what you were talking about the need to share. I used to work in alternative energy and I got really down. I got really upset. I would do public speaking about alternative energy and I would get upset. Like every day species are going extinct and we need to do something about this. And every day I woke up to this feeling of tragedy. And that's what was, you know, I thought was making me active. But my energy was going lower and lower. And I saw this video one day. I'll try to keep this really short, but I saw this video one day about, and it just happened to come to me, about the life of the sun. And it was this beautiful, I love like galaxy, you know, universe stuff. But at the end of the video, it said, and in X number of years, the sun will go out. And it was like such a wake up call to me that I had made all these ideas about the tragedy of species going extinct. And in the end, we're all going extinct. And it wasn't that I stopped caring. I still wanted to do my environmental work, but I was fueled by something before ideas of tragedy and need. And it feels like a metaphor for when I'm in the space of sharing that is coming from whatever light is bringing me, like that feels called to come into the world, but not from a place of there's anything wrong. There's a tragedy out there. And I feel like that fuels me to bring so much more. And when I'm in that space, I have so much more to give because I'm not in the illusion that there's a problem. I'm just in a space where it makes sense to me that if someone's taking a boat down a way that's bringing them more suffering, I might point out, as you said, that, well, I'm mixing metaphors now, but that the light's behind them, like that they're not broken. Things that I needed to know at a certain point. And Linda Pettit was sharing a story the other day where she said, you know, she asked Sid, is love enough? And to me, I think of the glow. And he said, love and understanding are enough. There is a peace with which, whatever wording it is, whether it's talking about the three principles or the inside out, whatever wording it is, or just saying, I feel like crap and I know it'll be okay, like that's part of nature. However it comes through, I do feel like the understanding piece is so helpful, but not helpful because something's broken that needs to be fixed. Helpful in a different way. And that, to me, is nourishing in the way that I share. And it's always an adventure. I have no idea. You know, I never know how it's going to come out. So.
Well, I'll tell you, whoever listens to you is lucky because I love the way that you share. Really, it's just brilliant. There's energy, there's love behind it. So thank you for that share. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions? Any thoughts? Let me see if there's.
Howdy.
Who's speaking?
Naftali.
Mr. Naf, what's up, man?
Not much. How you doing?
Good. Where are you at? I can't see you.
I don't know.
There you are. All right, buddy. What's up, man?
Not much. How you doing?
Good.
Good. I wanted to share something relative to something that you posted a long time ago, like a few months ago. And I've just been pissed off since then, needing to tell you all. So here we go. No, you'd posted something about how to share the principles, And I'm going to misquote you, but what the hell? You said something about, sort of first walk in somebody's shoes with them. And then, you can sort of offer them something of interest, right, about the principles or something like that. But if you kind of don't do that first part, like the second part won't land as well, or won't land at all. And in listening to that and thinking about like my life and just sort of wanting to help people my whole life and having seemingly have had a lot of success helping people my whole life, long before I ever stumbled upon the book. That if I think about all the times that I was like most helpful to somebody in their words, right? Like when people said like, holy shit, that was amazing. I said almost nothing. Right? So it wasn't even that the listening and understanding was a precursor to doing. And I think we live in such a culture that is action oriented, and we talk about massive action and results and goals and all that kind of stuff. So it certainly seems that doing nothing would be a bad idea. But really, it's always been in just listening. Kind of a funny story was I was at the airport going to India a few years ago, and I had like a long time to wait for my flight, and I was sitting at the bar, and this woman came up to me, like my age, and she just started talking to me, and I could tell it was going to be, one of those conversations where she just wanted to tell me a real life story, and she did, and I really didn't want to be there, and so I kind of, I didn't ignore her, but I really didn't engage with her, and I just kind of listened, and after an hour and a half, she got up and said, I got to tell you, thank you so much. You've helped me so much. And I thought back, like that sort of thing has been happening to me in my whole life. Right? Like the number of people that have told me that, that they would tell me anything, or after just meeting me. And I realized it came from just listening and really listening, like without judgment. Like my therapist from a long time ago joked, this is really off color, but he said, I think if somebody told you that they had sex with a horse, you'd say, what kind of horse? And it was really like that level of just not engaging with the content. Like it just doesn't matter where somebody is, what they're doing, what they're coming from, what sort of horrible things they may have done. It has nothing to do with it. And anyway, so I just wanted to.
Thank you, my man. That was beautiful. I was actually, this call wouldn't have been complete with a sex with a horse comment. So I just wanted to.
I'm glad that this is recorded.
Yeah, no, it is, and we're gonna cut that clip out and just show like what this group was about. Just want someone to hear that part.
No problem.
I do want to share something that I think. When I hear Michael Neal and some of the high-level practitioners, or however you want to call it, do you ever notice how quick they figure, like they listen to someone, you're like, how the hell did they come up with that? How do they come up with this idea? Or, and what I've realized, something that's been very useful for me, okay, just from being at a recovery center with people that have no idea that what I do, and they come in every single week, there's new people in there and old people alike. And so I have to kind of make it fresh for everybody in a sense. But when it comes to question and answers, one of the things, I'll give you a very direct example, and that may be useful, is I spoke about this in my professionals group, which is stating the obvious, right? Stating the obvious is one of the most useful and helpful things that we can do. And I'll give you an example. One of the women in my group yesterday said, the problem with addicts, according to CBT, the other class that they took with the therapist, is that addicts tend to go from thought to action, which means they don't have time to think, maybe I shouldn't take this drug. So they believe that that's what happens. So she said, well, what do you do with an addict like me who goes right from thought to action? And so I state the obvious, okay? And here's how I see it. Maybe useful for you guys. I'm going to get in trouble by the 3P police because this may look like a strategy, but it's been very useful. That's 1 out of 70,000 thoughts that people, when people are in distress, they will bring a thought with that distress. So I always ask them, you're distressed, what from? And they will tell me specifically, because of this. So her thought was, because I'm an addict, I have a tendency to go from thought to action, or from negative thinking to taking heroin, was her experience. And then her CBT, her therapist who does CBT verified, yes, that's what addicts do. The most obvious thing that came to me is, well, if there's 70,000 thoughts that we have every single day, what do the other thoughts look like in her life? That's what I want to know. So I asked her, I said, well, have you ever thought about like having sushi? She said, yeah. I said, did you immediately run and get sushi? She's like, no. I said, well, I thought you go thought to action. She goes, well, no, not with every thought. So I wanted to catch her in something. Because, see, she was told that because she's an addict, she goes from thought to action. But when we do that, when we hone in on one single thought, we dismiss when we don't do it. We dismiss when we don't see it in other aspects of our lives. So I don't try to fix the illusionary thought or experience she's offered me. What I instead show her when she doesn't do it. So I asked her, I said, have you ever been cut off on the road and wanted to kill the person in front of you? She goes, oh yeah. I said, did you? And she's like, well, no. I said, have you ever wanted to slap your husband because you guys are in a fight and you hate him and whatever? She's like, yeah. I said, did you do it? No. Well, she said, maybe. No, she said no, right? And I just kept going and going and going and showing her that when we buy into something, be careful, because we don't buy it in other parts of our lives. So I said to her, I said, well, it's a really good idea that you go to thought to action, but the truth of the matter is we don't do it in a lot of other parts in our lives. But you've given yourself a terminology, a psychology called an addict, and you've given a thought more value called the thought to action value. And so when you do it, you just kind of, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. See, I'm an addict. This is what addicts do. But let me ask you, are you an addict when you want sushi but you don't do it? Or is that doesn't account to you being an addict? Are you just an addict every once in a while with only certain thoughts? And she just had this like, holy crap, I didn't see it in other parts. So one of the biggest, most useful things that I've seen, that I see Michael doing sometimes, I don't think he does it on purpose, is he finds something that we all have in our lives that we don't do the thing that we think that we're doing in that particular instance, right? And it happened on a call with me and Joe Bailey. Someone said they had a vaping issue and they wanted to know if I can help them with a 3 principles way of them getting out of, not vaping anymore. Because he thinks about vaping all the time and he's had this vaping addiction and it's been very frustrating for him. And he wanted a strategy, a 3 principle strategy. So I asked him, I said, well, and this was with Joe Bailey. I'm glad he liked the analogy. I said, well, if you have a thought that you want to eat poop, what kind of principle strategy would you need? And he said, well, I wouldn't need a strategy. I don't want to eat poop. I said, great. See, now I found something. I said, so you don't need a strategy for thoughts that don't matter. And he got to see it in person, live, in that experience. So he doesn't need a strategy to stop vaping. He just needs to see that the vaping thought is made from the same material as the poop thought. That's made from the same material as the I want to eat sushi thought and thought to action thought. They're all made from the same material. But we have this creative potential that we can also believe any thought. That's one other gift that we've been given, which is good. Because there are thoughts that I want to have, that I want to believe, like that I love my wife more than any other man that's on Match or Facebook. See, that's something I want to believe, right? And it's useful for me. There's a lot of thoughts. I want to believe that when I go see a movie that I'm going to get out of my idea that this is just a movie, and I want to immerse myself, right? It's okay to believe in a thought when it's useful. Nothing wrong with that. This whole idea, it's just you're thinking as if like thinking is bad. Thinking is what gives life to us. It's that when we don't know how to see its discretion and usefulness, and we don't know when it doesn't look useful, it doesn't look like what it's actually made of. And that takes over us. And that's a different conversation. And that's why, you know, when Sharon says, man, there's times where I don't feel okay, I just feel like shit, right? And then she can look back and see that shitty experience and see it however she wants to from that experience. So she's using thought useful there too. It's useful to see thought that way. And to constantly know that you have this ability to look back at times, maybe it takes a long time or whatever it is. So this idea that, you know, we have to be one thought away. You're never one thought away. You're on one continuous thought. It's like someone saying you're one stream away from the river. No, the river is the stream. You're in there. You're in it. You're in that experience. And as you can see it, there will be times where it's going to be useful to flow with the stream. And there will be times it'll be useful to hang on to a rock and look at something for a little bit. There are times where you're going to be stuck in the stream. But the stream will continue. The stream moves. The stream goes. You don't have to be one thought. You don't have to think of it in any other way. You are that thought, capital T thought. Yes, and in our personal experience, we can be one thought away. That's true. So the bottom line of all this is you cannot do this wrong. You cannot do this wrong. You cannot mess this up. And the way you prove that is by simply showing up in a recovery center with your friends and your family and just showing up. Simply showing up and doing it again and again. And when you're not showing up, like if I come here and say, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not showing up today. I'm already here. I'm still showing up. You can't not show up. You just show up. And that's what it is. And in that showing up, you point to what you see from what you've seen that's truthful for us. And you do it again and again. And someone, and it's funny because I thought Naf was going to say, you know, I read your post and I totally disagree. And what's funny is I'm okay if I go back. He didn't, you know, even though that's not how the went, but if he did say I disagree with what you said 2 months ago, it may turn out that I may disagree too. And that's actually part of it too. Whereas with certain understandings or certain philosophies, it's like as soon as you go, oh, I disagree now, it's like the walls crumble. It's like, no, this is one that you can evolve into, you can change with. And I can have, you know, what I always say, Alan Watts said, you're not obligated to be the person you were 5 minutes ago, right? Well, you're not obligated to be the person you were one experience ago. You're not obligated to be anything. And that is the freedom that we want to give to others, that I think is important to share for others, that they need to see in themselves from what we've seen in ourselves. And on that note, you have okay. Charlotte said, this is very useful. Sorry, I will wear glasses next time. And yes, I hope you do. That's a thank you for that. And let's do. We have a couple more minutes. Let's open the doors again. And what I want to do, because I did a lot of talking this one, I do want to do a part 2 where it's you guys asking questions, specific things like, okay, I see it here. How come I don't see it here? I'm going to talk to a group here. What do you think I should say? Would that be useful for you guys? Would that be cool? Because I guess in a way this was a kind of a primer. And so is anyone want to share, say anything?
Amir, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Rui.
Rui, what's up on that?
All good. No, I just wanted to share one thing. I think you touched a point that it's for me, it's probably where I am at the moment, which is instead of falling for trying to get to the bottom of what is true or what is not true, but stay at that level of usefulness. But sorry, of useful, being useful to the person who decides to believe or not believe, knowing that he's falling for it, right? So I think teaching that and pointing to that direction, that we all fall for that and we all will believe at some point, but it's good that you have that freedom to drop what is not useful and just stay with what is useful. And that's really good. I don't know, I might have a question out of that, which is some people sometimes they look for more prescriptive things, and probably they fall for the need to know the truth. And I wonder where you sit with that, because I'm at a point where I don't need to find that truth. I'm already happy with knowing this. But I wonder if you have clients who are continuously challenging and wanted to get to the bottom of it, because I'm not willing to go that. For me, that's kind of a trap. My belief right now. So I don't have the need to go into that, fall into that trap, going after that. But I wonder if you ever been in that position, or if you're challenged in that matter of trying to get to the truth. And evidence is for truth, I guess. That's what they want.
So my answer is that you guys are both falling for the trap. Because if they're trying to get into the bottom of it, and you're trying to find and you're seeing it as a trap, well, the first thing is there's no bottom of it to fall into. So how can it possibly be a trap if there is no existence of the first problem, right? Like, in other words, like when someone comes to me and says, I need to get to the bottom of it, let's talk about what it is that you're getting to the bottom of, right? What are we talking about? That's exactly the bottom of what? Well, then they'll say, well, truth, right? And all of a sudden, what happens with my clients is they start to see that they're just going to tack on one concept to another, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, why I'm saying be careful in your responses, because when we say it's a trap, well, that's also a concept.
Yeah, I know. So
right? So it's like if someone comes to you and says, look, one of your clients says, hey, I made an imaginary monster, and you say, well, I want you to see that let me make an imaginary trap. Well, it's a concept of a concept. In other words, I don't see it as a trap either, because I don't see getting into bottom of it as such thing to even figure out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Might have been a wrong word to use in that sense, but yeah, I fully identify with what he said, is concept after concept, and we have infinite concepts, and that's what I see, and I think it's the beauty of it, is that we have infinite concepts that we can yes. Go with whatever.
Yes. And the beauty of it is we can have conceptual conversations, and we can also be still and have that conversation be louder than the one that's conceptual, right? We can sit in silence, and that conversation is more fruitful than the one that you or I have with our clients about, well, what's the bottom of what? What's the concept of that? It's a trap. It's not a trap, and all this stuff. What's funny, what I write on my posts on Facebook, right? People can come back to me with, well, I agree or I disagree, or it's conceptual and all that stuff. And then they get on a call with me and go, we didn't talk about the thing that we talked about on your Facebook. And I go, yeah, well, that was just a conversation. We can go that route too. In other words, there's different ways of doing this whole thing, right? And the thing that I see some of us miss is some clients of mine think that the only way to truth is conceptual. And that's where it gets difficult. And what I used to do is try to dismiss their concepts with better concepts, not realizing I was doing the same thing. So I don't just follow that anymore. I sometimes laugh or I sometimes smile and I go, well, that's cool, right? And let me, I know there's someone that wanted to say something. We'll get to you real quick. Who was it, Gavin? Mr. Gavin?
Actually, I think this could take a while, so maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, I think I'll.
You want to?
Yeah.
Is it a question?
It's not especially a question. It's just like reflecting on some experiences, but I don't know. I can't think of a way to do it quickly, and I'm aware that this meeting is coming to an end. So maybe next time. Yeah. All right,
yeah.
thanks.
Let's do that. Let's do that. And I'm going to leave with a thank you, Gavin. And we'll do another one of these. I have something that I want to do with our group that I think will be really neat. I want to leave it with this. On Saturday, I used to be a very, very hardcore secular humanist and atheist. Like I used to be on radio shows and I used to argue with apologetics, apologists, and knew the history of religion and philosophical thought and all that. And I just don't care anymore. Like it was like the concepts don't interest me. I think it's cool. I like like reading that stuff, but it just doesn't have the oomph. So I got rid of all of my atheist and secular humanist books. By the grace of God, I found a secular humanist atheist group that wanted the books so they can sell the books to raise money for their fundraiser. And I got to meeting with them. And the first question they always ask is, so are you born again now? Like what happened? And I go, no, this just doesn't interest me like it used to. And we got to talking and I said, so what do you guys do? And they said, well, we're doing a fundraiser because every week on Sunday, we get together and we sing, we dance, and we have a speaker every single Sunday, and we eat and we reflect on life. And I just started to laugh. I said, oh, kind of like church. And he went, and immediately he went, no, well, it's not like church because, we don't talk about God. We just have fun and we connect and we went back to, and we have a speaker. And I went, why do you think that's important? And he kind of settled and he said, I used to be a Christian. And I'm not a Christian anymore because I have these ideas of what God is and what God isn't. But I can't stop doing the Sunday thing because it's about the feeling. Whether there's a God or whether there's not, whether I know, whether I don't, whether I argue and whether I beat Christians at their own game, one thing that I've seen that they have done so well is bring a feeling into a room. And I've realized whether I have God or not, I have that too. And it's been very interesting because that's one thing that goes beyond what I know in science, beyond what I know in that sense of like spirituality, because I don't believe in spirituality. But there's something that happens when we unite everybody and get them together on a Sunday and sing and dance and connect. That's beyond what I've read in any of my books. And then and I said to him, yeah, that's what I've seen too. And that's why you can have all my books. And we hugged and I left. And if I could leave that for all you guys here, whether you go to the Three Principles Church, or whether you think it's oneness or separateness, or whether it's noneness or oneness, we're all just looking to connect and have a deeper feeling. So let's just cut to the chase, get rid of all that bullshit, and just start from that space. And who knows? Maybe this atheist might find God one day. Who knows? So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And I hope this was valuable and worthwhile for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amir.
Thanks,
Take care.
Nick. Bye. Thank you so much.